it looks like it's 9:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. Welcome. My name is Amber Letcher. I am the 4-H Youth Development Specialist for SDSU Extension. We're really excited you could join us for week 2 of our Onward in October series, our virtual self-care series. Last week, if you were able to join us, we had SDSU Extension Health and Physical Activities Field Specialist Nikki and myself give us some breathing exercises to try. And if you missed that, it should be coming to you via a recorded link, so you can watch that later at your convenience. For today, Dr. Lorna Wounded Head will be discussing some tips on tracking spending so we can feel more in control of our finances. But before we get started, we'd like to know who is joining us today. So if you'd be willing to type your name into the chat box and also give us one thing that you are excited about for the weekend since it's Friday. And as you are doing that, I will go ahead and introduce Dr. Wounded Head, who is the Family Resource Management Field Specialist for SDSU Extension. Her work focuses on working with consumers to improve their financial security. And as an accredited financial counselor, Lorna uses her expertise to provide groups and individuals financial education to increase knowledge and plan to implement financial skills. So if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to also type those into the chat box, and we will get to those after the session. But now I'd like to welcome you, Lorna, and I'll turn the session over to you.
Great, thanks, Amber. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. All right, well, welcome today. I'm excited to hear that last week you learned about some breathing exercises, because today I'm going to start out with a breathing exercise. The reason I'm going to do that is because for some people, the word money or finances immediately causes a physical reaction, such as tension, tightening in the chest, maybe an increased heart rate, or a change in breathing. So to help reduce any stress that you might be feeling about thinking about this topic today, I'd like you to join me in a breathing exercise. So for my exercise, what I'm going to have you do is just breathe in for a count of 7 and feel your stomach expanding while you're breathing in. We're going to hold it for 7, and then we're going to breathe out for 7. So I hope that you will join me for this activity. So we'll go ahead and get started. So breathe in for a count of 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now hold for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now breathe out for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you had any tension in your shoulders or upper body, maybe you're feeling a little bit more relaxed right now. And if thinking about finances causes stress, just do some of those breathing exercises that you have learned last week, or anything that works really well for you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So with financial stress can stem from being in debt, not earning enough money, the expenses of raising kids, or even being married to someone who isn't any good with money. If you can reduce your financial worry, you will be able to focus on other important areas of your life and relax, knowing that you have a plan to handle your financial situation. Here are a few things you can do now to relieve your financial stress and make it easier to function each day. So the first strategy that I'm going to talk about is creating a budget or a spending plan. You may feel overwhelmed and think that a budget is only going to add to your financial stress, but it is the best tool that you have to get control of your finances and to stop worrying about money. A budget allows you to decide when and how you're going to spend your hard-earned dollars. The spending plan makes sure you cover your immediate expenses while still working towards your savings goals. It can also help you to find some extra money to put towards debt. The first few months of a spending plan and sticking to a budget are the most challenging. But once you understand what to do, you can often reduce the amount of time you spend on it, and in turn, reduce the amount of time that you spend worrying about money. The next strategy is getting an emergency fund. An emergency fund is a savings account meant to cover unexpected expenses and financial emergencies. Although a car repair can be expensive and stressful, if you know that you can tap into your emergency fund to cover it, a lot of the stress will go away. It's also easier to use the money in your budget the way that you have planned. If you know that that extra money is ready for those unexpected expenses. You should always have at least $1,000 in an emergency fund until you're out of debt. And then you can aim for 3 to 6 months of expenses in that fund. Building an emergency fund, especially if you're struggling to make ends meet, may seem kind of tough. But if you just start by setting aside a small amount, like maybe $10 a month or up to $100 a month, that helps you to start building that emergency fund. The next strategy is to get outside help. If you're really struggling with getting a handle on your budget and spending issues, don't be afraid to get outside help. You can take classes on basic money management and investing, which will help you plan out a budget and do the things that you really need to succeed financially. An accredited financial counselor is someone who can help you create long-term savings and investing strategy that will help you take care of your current needs and help you plan for the future. If you're feeling overwhelmed with debt, you can work with a credit counseling service to help you restructure your debt and in some cases, negotiate with creditors. And you can also take financial classes that coach you through the budgeting and other aspects of your personal finances. The next strategy is to determine what you can change. If you're having financial issues, it may be because you have an income issue or a spending issue, or even a combination of the two. If you know that you don't make enough money to keep up with your current bills, decide what you can do to change the situation. And if you think you have a spending problem and it's a compulsive behavior, you may want to attend a specialized group or get professional help dealing with the issues that you're facing. Once you have a plan that will help you change your situation permanently, you should be able to reduce your stress. And then the last strategy is to track your progress. While this may sound like it's not a solution to your financial problem, it can make a big difference in the amount of stress that you feel each day. Find positive aspects of your financial situation by tracking your progress towards your financial goals. Looking at the positive aspects of your current financial situation can also help you alleviate stress. And remember, you can change your financial situation and you will always find it easier if you're not living in an anxious state all the time. So where does tracking spending come into play when we're looking at financial stress? Tracking your spending is a financial management skill that can be used to help you get control over your finances. And it also helps you to make decisions about any changes that you might need to make with your finances. Tracking your spending can help you develop a spending plan if you don't currently have one. So really tracking your spending is just creating a record of how you are spending your money. When you are tracking your spending, you need to make sure that you include all of the spenders that are using the income. So I always think of if you have a spouse or a partner and you've combined your income, making sure that both of you are tracking that spending. If you have other family members who are relying on your income, make sure that you're tracking their spending or the amount of money that they're using too. And maybe one of the most important things that you need to do when tracking spending is making sure that you're actually physically recording the information and not just tracking it in your head. One of the key aspects of tracking spending is being able to analyze what you've learned from tracking your spending. If you are just kind of keeping track of it in your head, that you may not be able to get an accurate picture. But if you see it written out either on a piece of paper or an analysis from a spending app that you're using, you're going to be able to really look at it and realistically be able to see what is it that you have done for the past month, if that's your time period, and be able to make some changes. All right, so how does tracking your spending give you some control? Because tracking your spending isn't about limiting yourself. It's not about like denying yourself things that you might need or want during that time period. But you gain control because you're able to analyze what you're doing. You're able to look at how much money you're spending on those different spending categories. So if it's a case where you figure out how much you're spending each month on fast food or takeout food, you figure out maybe how much money you're spending on groceries or transportation. A lot of the tracking spending helps you get a better picture of how you're spending those. That's the flexible expenses. Those fixed expenses like your rent or mortgage or those bills that are exact same amount each month. Um, you know how much you're spending in those areas. So tracking really helps you maybe analyze that flexible spending. It helps you identify, where maybe you can reduce some spending or even eliminate some spending. And it helps you to make adjustments to be able to meet that financial goal. So as an accredited financial counselor, I work with individuals on a one-to-one basis to just help them answer questions, maybe to look at their financial situation and see where changes need to be made. So a couple of years ago, I was working with a young woman who had two children, and I asked her to track her spending for a few weeks because she was having trouble with that kind of that cash flow, where just not feeling like she had enough money to pay all of her bills, feeling kind of strapped, and also feeling like she didn't have money to be able to save for some of her goals that she was working towards. So I said, well, just track your spending and see what happens. And so one of the things that she was kind of her aha moment was how much money she was spending on fast food or takeout food. And as we talked about this, she realized that it, she was doing this because she had two children who were involved in after school activities. And so in the process of picking up the kids or having them at their sports or their lessons, it was usually kind of around or a little past supper time when they were heading home. And everybody was hungry, everybody was tired. And so it was just really quick and easy to be able to go through the drive-through and bring the food home. So once she realized this is what was happening, we just talked about what are some ways to maybe eliminate that feeling of hangriness, I guess, where you can't think because you're so hungry, you can't make any rational decisions. So we talked about just having some snacks in the car to eat, to kind of tide them over till they get home, to maybe have some food in the crock pot already prepared, or even just some frozen food that could easily just be thrown in the oven just to be able to quickly have a food meal prepared. We didn't decide that she was going to completely stop going through drive-throughs, but we talked more about what are those days when really that's really a necessity just based on your time. So that really just helped her out a little bit in that area. Then she was able to see some places where she could put more money towards her savings goals. So tracking your spending, one of the things I always talk about in all aspects of financial education is that you have to start thinking that you have control over your money and that your money does not have control over you. You're the one who's making the decision to spend, to save, whatever it is that you're doing. Your money isn't telling you to do that. So, but you need to do something so that you can get a little bit of sense of that control. So how do we track spending? It's actually a very simple process. I'm going to talk you through the steps. The very first step is to collect receipts, bank statements, credit card statements, anything that gives you a record of how much money you're spending. If you're someone who uses cash, then keeping those receipts or even just writing things down is pretty important during the time period. Usually we track spending. If you've never done it before and you're just trying to get a sense for where you're at, tracking spending for a month's time period gives you the best picture of what you're doing with your finances. And the reason we use that month time period is because most likely you're going to have similar expenses month to month. There may be some variation in that depending on the time of the year, but usually we have our habits and we are spending on pretty similarly from month to month. Then as you are collecting that information, you want to categorize where your spending is. So things like you're going to maybe categorize groceries, going out to eat, debt payments, transportation, insurance, kind of anything. The categories that you come up with are going to be very specific to you. Maybe you have childcare expenses. Maybe you have children are in school and they have sports activities. So maybe you have another category for that. So it's going to be, you're going to kind of create this as you go. And it may even surprise you what some of the categories of spending that you might have. Then once you have tracked for your 4 weeks or your month time period, then you're just going to total up each category, and then it's time to analyze it and just to be able to look at it. And this should hopefully really, it should just give you that picture of what it is that you do with your money on a monthly basis. Maybe you don't really know what the truth is, but just know that whether you actually know what the numbers are or whether you kind of like, well, I don't want to pay attention to it, the same thing is happening. It's just that control comes from knowing what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that you have to stop buying a coffee at the coffee shop, or that you have to stop having, going out to dinner or having a takeout pizza night or anything like that. It just, once you know what you're doing and kind of recognize those behaviors, then you're going to, it's acceptable. It's not, you're not going to feel guilty about doing it. So as you analyze, just real simply kind of think about, what surprises you? What were some categories that you were a little shocked in? Maybe how much you were spending. Maybe there's some categories that you need to spend more money on, but because you're spending too much on one thing, you maybe aren't taking care of your car like you need to, or you're not taking care of yourself, or you're some of those other categories. So look at what are the categories that you're spending the most, and objectively look at whether or not that's reasonable. So I always think of groceries as a category that's going to vary from family to family, and depending on how much you're spending, if it seems like a lot, kind of balance that out and think about, are you throwing away food that you're not using? Are your cupboards overflowing and you still go buy more food? Then maybe you are spending too much. If you're feeling like you have you do menu planning and you have a plan and you use what you purchase, then maybe that's what your situation is. Always remember that that food that we purchase away from home and consume is also a part of our meal plans, essentially. So if it seems like, wow, I don't spend that much on groceries, then look at how much you're spending it on food in other areas, because we know we eat, and that's just something that we do. And then look at categories that maybe you can adjust. So I know with COVID, there's a lot of talk about, because more people are staying at home. There's a lot of, we're doing our entertainment at home. So maybe there's some streaming services that you subscribe to that you're not actually using, or that automatically renew and you don't actually realize they're being renewed and then you're not using them. So, be able to look at that and see, is there something that you should cut out, or maybe as a reminder that, oh, that's one more thing that we can do, instead of, getting, if you've gone through all your series on Netflix and you're trying to figure out what to do. I always have like a little short period of depression when I finish a series on Netflix until I can find something else. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? But the key to this is that analyzing. So now, so methods to track your spending. You need to find out one that works best for you. I am an Excel file tracker. I've used an Excel file for my budget for years, and it's what I like to do. I've tried Mint as an app, and it just doesn't work for me the way I like to do things. But so you have to find out what works best for you. With paper, like I use that Excel file. You can find fillable forms online. There's plenty of free ones, so I wouldn't I would discourage you from having to pay for one, because there's plenty of free ones. Or maybe you just have a notebook and you're just going to write it all down in that notebook. There's a lot of spending apps available. This website here, Best Apps for 2020, has quite a few different ones that are listed. Mint, Wally, and YNAB are three that I recommend. They're free, and they're also secure. And the nice thing about the apps is you can link your credit card and your debit card to those accounts. And so as you spend, it automatically tracks it for you. If you use cash, it's not going to track that, but you can always add that to it. So, so your method for tracking is just, whatever works best for you. And you may try one thing and then realize it's not working, but then maybe you have to come up with a plan B for your method. All right, so of course I want to, just me telling you this, you're like, yeah, I'm not sure if this really helps me at all. So I have created a challenge for the next 30 days. I challenge you to track your spending. And I'm going to help you through that process by guiding you, giving you some additional resources. And then at the end of the challenge, when you're analyzing your information, then help you if you have any questions at that point. So what the challenge is to track your spending. I have the challenge starting next Monday, but I know that, really, you can start tracking whenever you want. What I'd like it is if you would commit to the challenge, because then I can send you some resources and give you additional information and assistance as needed. You'll decide which method you'll use. I'd like you to set a goal. So thinking about what is it that you want to be able to achieve through this challenge. And then at the end of the challenge, you'll have an opportunity to analyze what you've learned about your spending. To sign up for the challenge, I have a link to a Google form. It's on the screen, and Amber is going to type it into the chat for me. So you should just be able to click on that in the chat, and it'll take you to that Google form. All I ask on that form is that you commit to the challenge. I ask for your name and your email address, your first name. You identify the method that you're going to use, and then you set a goal. And then each week, once you've signed up, you'll receive an email from me with some tips and information, and just some encouragement. This is a new thing, so unless you're in the habit of tracking, you might forget to do it. So I'll give you some little nudges to help you remember. And then at the end of the challenge, I'll send you another link to a Google form to reflect on this experience. Google form is secure. I'm the only one that will be able to see your responses, and none of this information will be posted in any place. So it's very secure. So tracking your spending, I hope I've given you some ideas on how this can help to alleviate some of your stress. Especially if there's some areas in your financial life that you have some concerns. If, like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested, if you're feeling like you have too much debt but don't have any way to help reduce that debt any quicker, tracking will really give you that better picture of that situation. There's always ways that we can reduce our flexible spending, but if we have a good idea of what we're doing, then we can go through and make any changes. So at this time, I open things up for questions. Looks like we have about 6 minutes left. So,
Yes, and we did have one question come in about, is there any benefit to when you're categorizing your spending? Is it better to have just a category for groceries, or maybe separate them out with grocery store, fast food, etc.? Is there maybe a best practice?
I would do that. The way I track my spending is I have like a grocery category, and then I have a going out to eat category, which is where I lump in. Sometimes we go to like we'll run to the convenience store and get a snack or whatever. And so that's kind of my going out to eat category. It's going to be up to you though. For us, it might make more sense if I separated the, say, going to a restaurant versus convenience store pickups, just to kind of get a better sense of that. But if you find, I would separate it just because it is kind of two kind of expenses and things that you can change. So actually, so you entered the link to an article, not the Google, or did you enter the Google form link? I'm not seeing it.
It's just right below, so maybe that's the issue here. We'll type that
Oh,
in
yeah.
again. Get that.
Do you want to enter it again? Yeah, it might look like it's all connected.
It's part of it. So I'll enter that in again,
great.
so everybody can
There
kind of.
should be, somebody said that it wasn't loading, so I want to make sure that it
works there.
It works, yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
You can always email me too, and I can send it. I know you're recording this, and it'll be sent out at another point in time. So for anyone who listens to the recording and would like to be a part of the challenge, that Google form will be open, and I'll just check it. And you can start the challenge whenever you want. There's no deadline for that.
And maybe we will do that. We'll send out a follow-up to this meeting just so that everybody who also registered and maybe didn't get a chance to hop on today can also get a hold of that form.
That sounds good.
We do. If there are other questions, please feel free to type those in. While you're thinking of that, we do have a couple of polling questions that we like to do at the end of every session, just to get some feedback from you. So I'll launch those, but again, feel free to type in some of those questions if you have them. So our first one for you is just, did you feel whether the session today was a good use of your time? So go ahead and answer that when you have a second.
While you're doing those, Lorna, I have a question. This is Heidi.
Hi,
I'm
Heidi.
also an Excel person. And one thing I have found is life is getting in the way as far as time management. My strategy right now is I do collect all of the receipts for both my husband and I. If I do cash and I'm not getting a receipt, I try to remember to jot it down and on a sticky note or something, drop it in the drawer. My goal is always at the end of the month to pull everything into my Excel sheet. What could be a better way to do that? I feel like I'm not utilizing it to the best of the ability. And I do go over the spreadsheet. We talk about it. We identify those areas. What else, since you said you're a spreadsheet person, works for you to balance out two spenders?
So I would track it and record on your Excel spreadsheet more often during the month. Because usually you're going to have fewer items, and then it'll take you less time. So so I say that I don't always practice it, but I do know that when I do practice that, it's slick. It takes me just a short period of time, and then I know I'm up to date. And it also helps me to kind of see where I'm at. So let's say I've already spent a lot of money on groceries for the month. It just gives me that trigger. Oh, I need to maybe cut back a little bit. So that's what I would suggest. And if you could even just set yourself schedule an appointment with yourself to do that, at a time that you know that it's going to work best for you. Because I know you have kids and got a lot of stuff going on. I always try to do it on Saturday morning, just because that just works best for me. But that's what I would do. So I would try to record it more than once during the month. And then it'll probably take a shorter period of time. Plus you'll be able to kind of analyze things maybe a little bit quicker and more realistically. So if you have gone over or spent a lot in one area, you can cut back a little bit.
Thanks, that's great. And my last question is going to show that I'm really a control freak and detail oriented, and it's sometimes makes too much time consuming steps for me. When I go on my receipts, I used to go and I would split receipts into the categories if there was something that would be in multiple categories. I found that took too much time. And then if I got behind and I was going through the online bank statements, I would then double count stuff and I would just do a total on a receipt again because I couldn't see that. I know that sounds really confusing, but so then I started to just pull a receipt total. So if groceries and other items are all on there and there might be tool purchases on there or other things, I would just lump it all into one category so I could cross-check it with an online statement. Is that helpful? Should I really be taking the time to split out items into their specific categories? Or is it one of those, it's okay because of time management factors?
So Heidi, you and I are very similar. I used to be very, very specific about, yeah, let's say I bought groceries and maybe I bought some cleaning supplies with it. I, would go through and separate those out. What I do now is if I buy something at Hy-Vee, it just all goes in my grocery section. In the end, you're kind of looking at the overall big picture. If I went to, like if I shopped at Walmart and I know I had a mix of different things, I would probably break that down just to give me a better idea. Like, or I have a dog, so I don't put, like when I go to Runnings, those dog purchases just kind of go under dogs. If I happen to pick up treats at Hy-Vee, that just all goes in grocery. And I just found that's easier because in the end, it's really just being able to see how much you're spending and making sure that you're not overspending. So it's very personalized, but if you're finding that you're making mistakes or that you're having to go back over and redo things, then what I would do is either just, like if you save every single receipt, just work with all your receipts, or just work with your bank statement, just so that things don't get confusing. But figure out, give yourself some grace in terms of which is the easiest method to do. In my mind, it's just making sure that I'm aware of what we're doing. If there happens to be some things mixed in, like for example, if I go to Hy-Vee gas and buy gas and then I pick up a sandwich for lunch or whatever, I don't get too shook up about breaking that down into going out to eat and gas. I just kind of lump it all together because it's not that big of a deal. Does that make sense, Heidi?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so kind of just figure out ways, what is your overall goal in tracking your spending? Is it to make sure you stay within your budget? It sounds like if you're doing it on a regular basis, you're tracking to stay within your budget. And so if you buy groceries and some tools, which seems like two very odd things that you'd buy together, but it depends on where you're shopping. If it's easier just to lump it all into one thing, then that's just so much easier. And maybe when you have a little bit more time, then you break it out a little bit. How you track is you're going to kind of work it out the best for you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I know we're running up against time. Of course, if there's other questions, we can also get to those. I've got two other polling questions that if you're willing to stick around and answer those, that would be great. We can do those pretty quickly. So the next one just asks your knowledge of benefits and ways to practice self-care. How confident are you in those after the session? Go ahead and answer that question. Perfect. Okay. Looks like people are feeling confident, very confident in their abilities. That's great. And then our last question for you is, how confident do you feel to perform the self-care activity on your own? And there you go. You can answer that one as well. I'm really excited about this challenge, Lorna. I think that's a great idea. also helpful to be accountable when you have when you have a reason to track those. All right. And looks very confident. That's excellent. Okay. If there's no other questions, thank you again so much for joining us. Next week, we're going to talk about some meal planning and maybe have some freezer meal ideas. So we hope to see you next Friday again at 9:30. Thank you again, Lorna, for sharing all these tips with us this morning. Have a great
Have
weekend.
a great weekend, everybody.